Let's stay with the geopolitics in Europe now and the future of the Ukraine war. The Shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel is in Munich for the Security Conference, from where I spoke to her a little earlier. The American Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, said that NATO membership for Ukraine is unrealistic. Our Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary are saying today that Ukraine is on an irreversible path to NATO membership. Who's right?
Well, look, I think first of all NATO countries have given enormous support to Ukraine. And ultimately, Trevor, it is obviously for Ukraine and for NATO to determine Ukraine's membership. And that is something that obviously Ukraine as a country, and we've heard this constantly from President Zelensky, that is where they want to be. That is their aspiration. And I really think, as I've said previously, and I think many of us have said, this is all about Ukraine, and they need to be able to determine their future. They are a sovereign country. They are fighting for their freedom and their sovereignty. And quite frankly, it is absolutely down to them to, choose the course that they wish to go alongside with NATO. And I think NATO allies and countries will continue those discussions with them.
So were you Foreign Secretary, you would support their application for NATO in the full knowledge that that might mean that we would actually have to fight, actually have to put boots on the ground?
Well, I think, look, Britain's position has been pretty much unequivocal from day one. Look at the intensive support and, quite frankly, the right support that we have provided to Ukraine. We were the ones that were leading the Ukraine effort, Trevor, and you will know this, and have been at the outset and over the last 3 years, whether it was providing Storm Shadow missiles or Challenger 2 battle tanks, as well as the multi-year financial commitments that we've put in. So I actually think that, NATO allies and countries have effectively not just been supporting Ukraine, but effectively been paving the way for them to become a member. And that is something that, has clearly been part of our collective focus in recent years. And I think it continues to be now.
That is a description of the past. But what we were discussing was you would support their membership of NATO, which would mean, Article 5, that in current circumstances, we would have to put British troops on a Ukrainian soil. And what I'm really asking you is, would you be up for that?
Well, look, we don't know that for now. And let's not forget, this war is still a hot war and there is conflict taking place, even while we're all here at the Munich Security Conference and, there are new initiatives and thoughts and suggestions and a lot of commentary. First and foremost, I'm not talking about the past. I'm actually speaking about the current situation that we are actively giving support to Ukraine right now. And that support from us, from the United Kingdom, as a member of NATO, will continue as long as this war continues. And I think with that, of course, ultimately it is for Ukraine and for NATO to decide their long-term future and their membership. And quite frankly, with NATO countries supporting Ukraine in the way in which we have, we've been paving the pathway for them to effectively become a member through the long-standing and extensive support we've been giving them.
All right. Let me try another way to see what is the depth of our support. Were there to be a deal of some kind between the Americans and the Russians and the Ukrainians that involved peacekeeping forces, and we were asked to supply forces for such a peacekeeping force, would you be right? Would you say yes to that?
I think, Trevor, look, I'm not even going to comment on that suggestion because it's pure speculation. These are very, very early days. There are live and active discussions.
It's what it would mean, isn't it? That's what a peace deal would mean.
Well, we don't know actually what a peace deal and a peace settlement would mean and what it would look like. I think, we all have to be very calm and cool right now in terms of the fact that, these are suggestions and initiatives that are being, quite frankly, not even discussed. There are suggestions that are being mooted right now. There'll be many dialogues and discussions. I understand that there'll be a summit in Paris tomorrow involving prime ministers and European leaders.
Yes.
We actually all need to understand in more detail what the American position is. Currently, we heard certain views yesterday. I was in a forum where General Kellogg spoke. We have to get a better understanding and more clarity as to, what the thought process is, and then understand what roles we will play in terms of taking this forward.
Can we talk about something that you perhaps can say something about? Vice President seemed to suggest in his speech that Europe had moved far away from its liberal democratic values, particularly in relation to free speech. And your leader this morning says in one of the newspapers that free speech is under threat in Britain. Do you agree?
Well, look, as someone that's a former Home Secretary, I've had to effectively battle many of these free speech issues and cancel culture and, campuses on universities silencing various groups and individuals and organisations. We are, as a party, we are long-standing advocates of free speech. And, there's more that we need to do.
Is it any part of the American Vice President's business to be telling us that we're drifting away from our values? I mean...
Do you know, I actually think Trevor, if I may say so, I disagree with that premise. He is absolutely within his rights to give a speech with any content that he chooses. That's absolutely right and proper. He's given a view. Personally, I think it's up to politicians and governments of the day to, either stand up and demonstrate what they're doing or, tackle some of these issues that exist within different countries and within different systems. All our systems are very, very different. Let's not forget that. Our laws and legislation are different.
So do you agree with what he said?
Well, look, what I agree with is the fact that he's absolutely entitled to give the speech of, his own
That's not the same thing, though, is it? I'm asking if you agreed with what he said.
I think it is. Well, look, I agree with the fact that many of us are challenged when it comes to, and by that I mean our own countries and some of the issues that we face on free speech. I've just given you examples, Trevor, of some of the examples domestically in the United Kingdom. I've experienced that certainly in my previous portfolios in government. These are challenges that we have had to face in our country, and there's always more that we must do to defend free speech.
All right. Boris Johnson's tweeting this morning that it should be up to Ukraine and not the Americans to decide whether to join NATO. He thinks they should. But does this signal Boris Johnson's return to frontline politics? There are rumours that he wants to be back in the game.
Well, look, Trevor, I've not followed any of those rumours, but, I come back to the point that I have already made, that it is absolutely down to Ukraine in terms of its future when it comes to NATO membership. That is absolutely crystal clear. It really is. I can't sort of comment on sort of, speculation and perhaps commentary in British newspapers because obviously I've been here in Munich and the focus here has absolutely been on, the collective support for Ukraine. And actually, if I may say so,
we've been over that and you've told me that before. But just on Boris Johnson, he would say that, he's a bit like the Roman general Cincinnatus, being called back from his farm to save the Republic. If that were the case, would you welcome his return?
Look, I'm not even going to go there, Trevor. I do just want to make the point, which is actually about Boris Johnson and the leadership that he gave over Ukraine. That is something here at the Munich Security Conference that is widely recognised. It is widely understood that it was our government at the time under Boris Johnson's premiership that led the UK position on Ukraine. And I can tell you something now, that is widely understood here and it's widely respected here as well. And so it is not surprising, if I may say so, that Boris has given his view about the future of Ukraine. He made great commitments for our country. I think we should be proud of the way in which we led our collective effort and also have consistently stood shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine.
For Shadow Foreign Secretary, your warmth will be noted by Mr. Johnson and others. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Trevor.